Thank you to our sponsors for today's video, StarCharge, InfyPower, Eaton, and Amber. StarCharge is the largest EV charging manufacturer in the world and is also a provider of residential and commercial battery storage and microgrid solutions. And InfyPower is the largest EV charger module provider with over 3 million power modules running reliably worldwide. Their latest G2 collection features ultra-high power density and efficiency for EV charging and energy storage integration. InfyPower, innovation for your power. This video is also brought to you by Eaton. Eaton is a one-stop shop for implementing reliable and innovative EV charging infrastructure at your site. Across all applications, Eaton's EV charging infrastructure hardware and software gives you the scalability, flexibility, and intelligence you need to charge today and scale tomorrow. Learn more at eaton.com/EVCI. And Amber, providing modern protection plans for your Tesla's battery and more without the hassle of long-term contracts or upfront payments. Check out the link in the description to explore their plan options and use code SPEC5 for a 5% discount on all plans. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Welcome here to the Northern Colorado area and welcome to a familiar site if you're a viewer. This is the Lucid Air Grand Touring, updated for 2025, that we've been driving for the last 3 months, just over, and 15,000 miles. It was super important to me that we got back into a Lucid after covering them very closely a couple years ago and seeing where the improvements are, what's good, what still needs improvements, and well, this video is going to be sort of the wrap-up final bow of our 3-month long-term test of this Lucid Air Grand Touring. And what we're going to do is summarize all of our testing results for you, our range test, charging 10% and hogback, talk about some of the road trips we've done with it, talk about things we like and dislike, and even the massive amount of improvements that this car has had through over-the-air software updates just in our time with it. This is probably going to be a long video. We're not trying to make it super long, but if you don't want to watch the whole thing and just want to know what we think about the Lucid Air as a whole, well, we love it here. This has been a favorite in the stable here at Out of Spec, and it is going to hurt to give it back because this car has truly matured since we have reviewed it the first time. And well, I think they deserve all the credit in the world for making this a much better product than it was even just a couple years ago. So, Jordan, it obviously is unlocking and locking a bunch when we walk up and away from it.
That may be one of the things we nitpick a little bit here and there, but...
So, okay, whenever we're reviewing a car, especially Lucid, I feel like we dig into the little details very quickly. We're like, oh, the seat motors are a little bit weird, and the volume slider doesn't adjust enough, although that's been fixed. But I think we should just back up for a second and give a 30,000 overfoot view. What am I trying to say? Overhead view?
Yeah.
Thank you, that one. Words are tough today. And the car's dirty. And we actually left it kind of dirty for this video on purpose. A, because it was freezing, and if we wash it, the car freezes over. It's warming up now. But two, it's because that's how we've used this car. We've really put the miles on this thing. It goes out, it works for us. We've done a bunch of testing with it. And so I think if you just zoom out and ignore some of our very, I think valid, but little nitpicks and critical complaints about Lucid in certain areas, the car itself, from the driving dynamics to the range, it did over 510 miles at 70 miles an hour in our test. It's extremely comfortable. Just the ride quality, the feel of it, honestly, the durability that we've had with this car, very, very, very few bugs or issues with it, to be honest. They deserve all the credit in the world for engineering one of the best cars on the road ever. There's no question. And I think you'll see a lot of these little nitpicks and complaints for us because they're so close, right, Jordan? They're like a couple updates away from what they claim is the best car, best sedan in the world. We're like, okay, just a couple little things. We want them to get there. And man, but the Lucid Air, it's so cool. It's not talked about enough in the EV sphere. It's an incredible benchmark vehicle. And Jordan joins me behind the camera because he's actually been really the one driving this car most of the time in our testing and in road trips, etc. Mr. Jordan Schieffer, you've been the main steward of this car. This has been sort of not necessarily your car. Everyone's been driving it, but we've done so much with it. And before we get into your thoughts on the car, before we get into sort of what we've done with it over the last 15,000 miles or so, I really just want to encapsulate our testing right now. What are the results and how did it do compared to other cars in our 4 main tests?
Yeah, so notably the range test is a huge one. We actually did 2. And they got over 500 miles. So you've tested previous Lucid Air Grand Touring, which had EPA of over 500, but the EPA testing has changed. It's more strict now.
And the car updated.
And the car updated. And this is, it's rated for 512. We did 511. That's crazy. That's really impressive.
So for 25, one of the reasons we have this car is it's a upgrade in terms of battery capacity,
right,
and also in terms of efficiency.
Yep.
So there's new heat pump and thermal systems for 25, and the battery pack has gone from 112 to 118 usable.
Yeah.
And I think we pulled every bit of 118 out of it, right, during the range tests?
Yeah, it's a huge battery for the size of the car, and it's like 4.3 something miles per kilowatt hour. Really quite impressive efficiency results. It almost felt like Lucid engineered it for our 70 mile an hour range test, which was cool.
But they didn't. I talked to them about that. They didn't do that. It just is coincidence.
That was like how it felt. We were just like, wow, this is blowing our minds.
Because at 80, efficiency really drops,
right,
or 85 especially, which it does with any electric car, but this really has a drop at high speed.
But on that note, the next test we did was the 10% challenge.
Well, wait, on the range test, Jordan, we ran 2. Do you want to explain why?
Well, yeah, okay. The first one we ran
they were like 1 day apart from each other, right?
1 day back to back. Low PSI on the first one because I misread the sticker.
Well, so let's show everyone that. This car originally was produced on the 20-inch wheels, I believe.
Yep.
And so I wonder if my phone will wake up the car. Come on, Lucid.
This is one of my nitpicks that we'll talk about later.
Oh gosh, I'm in the Lucid app. Is Bluetooth? Let me just force an unlock.
There we go.
Bluetooth's on and everything. That is one of the nitpicks.
Yeah, that could use some work. But yeah, this was delivered on the
21-inch wheels.
Yep. So I read 42 PSI. I threw in 42 PSI, but these are actually meant to be 49 PSI.
And that's 49 cold. So whenever the number says on the door, that's the cold tire pressure. So technically you're really driving at 50, 51 most of the time on these.
So they were way low on tire pressure and I still beat 500 miles.
Yeah, you did 504?
503-ish, something like that.
Okay.
But then you did it the next day proper tire pressures.
Well, actually, yeah, so we noticed that you were running the wrong tire pressures because Lucid called and said, we just happened to check the car.
Yep.
And someone noticed you're like almost 10 PSI below where you should be.
Yep.
And I was like, oh crap, well that's not on purpose.
No. And just, I mean, it showcased, if anything, the car did really well even at the incorrect conditions. So we then did it the next day, got even more range by a little bit.
Yeah,
so
about 7 miles more or something.
Yeah, tire pressure doesn't make a huge difference, but enough that we really needed to make sure we did it right.
The only way to really judge that is to run them side by side, of course.
Yeah.
But it did 510.5 miles at 70. I think it's on the website at 511 because we rounded up.
Yep.
And it still went farther afterwards. That was when it couldn't maintain 70 miles an hour.
Then it went 12 more miles at low speeds, but like it just kept going.
Yeah.
So 70 miles an hour efficient. We also did our 10% challenge, which is done at 80 miles an hour. And yes, it is less efficient, but it still did good results in that, 155 miles.
Yeah, really setting the benchmark other than Taycan.
That's up there playing with the Taycans, basically. That's the one below it and above it and then way above it, those are all Taycans.
So the 10% challenge is where we simulate how well it does on a road trip. And that's where we get to a charging station at 10% state of charge. We charge for 15 minutes, and it's really about how many miles of usable range can you add in that 15-minute charging session when you're driving 80 miles an hour.
Right.
And the Lucid charges amazing down low. I mean, it holds over 300 kilowatts to 22%, I believe.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ryan has a little bit better curve than what I think you have on there, Jordan.
Yeah.
But yes.
I mean, I have the optimized curve, and that's one of the issues, I think, is like the theoretical optimized curve is not something you'll ever see with the Lucid, because if it peaks crazy high, like on the I-90 surge, Dave was like 333, like he saw crazy speeds.
And then he saw 340 after that.
Yeah, but then if it peaks at that, then it tapers sooner. Whereas if it doesn't peak as high, it'll hold a bit longer. So it's almost like the area under the curve is kind of always the same. It's just, and so if you play with that, you can actually take good advantage of it. But if you're doing like zero full,
The 10% challenge, it did really well. It showed that this thing's an incredible road tripping beast. The only thing to best this car, and like in a completely different stratosphere as the Taycan.
And
that's why
200.
that's why we love Taycan so much, because it's repeatable, consistent, fast charging.
Yep.
They gave up so many compromises with Taycan, maybe space, cooling packaging, cost, whatever it might have been. Certainly battery capacity, it's way less than Taycan, but it's a freaking mega road tripper. And we found that out in the Surge.
Yep.
And that is, we'll get into our thoughts on all of that, but the Lucid still did really well. It's just finicky. You need to have the right preconditioning. The car doesn't really tell you when you're at the right preconditioning. It's super high voltage, which actually makes it not play so nice with certain chargers, ChargePoint Express Plus. And, and so it's just, it's not the easiest to optimize. This is a car you just plug it in, walk away, come back when you're done doing whatever you have to do, and it's got all the range in the world to take you after that.
That's the thing. It can lean on not the best charging ever, because it is really quite efficient and it just goes so long. And that's like a nice thing. I mean, we've been playing with EVs like the EV6 GT, where out of a full charge, you're still getting less than half of what this car can do. So just driving around town in both these cars, I'm not stressed driving the Lucid. I'm like, oh, I'll charge eventually.
Yeah, you never have to think about it. Like, it's at 35% right now. It's like, oh, I will charge it in 2 weeks.
Yep. So yeah, range test, 10% challenge, charging.
So let's talk about charging in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
The curve, which is on the website, best as we could get it. We've done a ton of DC fast charging with the Lucid, and you know, the 0 to 100% time of all of our testing that we've done, I think 2 or 3 0 to 100s, they've all been like 70 to 75 minutes.
Yep.
Which isn't great, but no one's really doing that in the real world. What matters more is the 10% challenge, that 15-minute top up to us. But it is important to note that if there was a complaint that we could have about this car, it would be like, we want to keep all the range, the capacity and everything, but just make it charge like Taycan.
Yeah.
The competition's doing it. The Chinese cars, Li Auto, Mega, all these other things, they're optimized for high power charging. And while certainly the range means that you can skip a charging session and maybe ignore it altogether, which is a huge benefit of Lucid.
Agreed, yep.
Wouldn't it be nice just to have consistent fast charging everywhere?
It would be really cool to plug in, and if you are a super nerd, which I think a lot of Lucid owners are, they're super nerds, they're enthusiasts, and they want to be able to plug in at like 35% and know where they're going to intercept the curve and ride that. And that's the challenge with this, is just like really slightly inconsistent. Still, I'd say overall fine charging. But it's just like not knowing exactly what you'll get each charging session is kind of fun for us, but also like frustrating if you're an enthusiast trying to do a really predictable session.
Yep, totally. And I think the final point on charging is what you just said there, Jordan. It's not bad. Yep. Don't take our criticisms as thinking this is a bad charging vehicle. It holds 200 kilowatts to, I don't know, 35%-ish.
I've seen over 45% up to, but then it drops pretty quickly.
I know at 50%, it's like 160 kilowatts.
Yep, and it holds that for a while too. So really, like, this car rocks up to about 75%. Yeah. After that, don't charge it.
Right, just head out to the next one.
But you don't need to. At 75%, you've got more range than most cars do at 100.
It's a great point.
Which is cool.
It's a great point. Really great point. So, okay, I mean, you know, like I said, we've been hard on Lucid for their charging. I think what 2 things that could help would be give us a temperature gauge and give us like a, you know, is the charging station limited by the car? What could you have done better? It does tell you when it's limited by the charger. It says, hey, I'm asking for more than what the charger's giving. So there's some nice things in there, but I think their charging programming and how they display it to the user, just benchmark Porsche there and give us that same gauge.
Yeah, but the plug and charge, having that is great. The charge port is very slow, but that's okay.
Show everyone the charge port.
The handshake time is not the best.
Let me unlock.
Come on.
Gosh, come on. I'm opening the Lucid app, unlock.
There we go.
Okay.
Now I should be able to tap it. And
yeah, it's at the bottom is where you push it. There we go. And then this is where you're like, let me plug in the damn car.
Because you know your handshake time is going to be a little bit long. So I'm glad it has plug and charge. That's extremely important, as we say with all EVs.
One of the problems though is the supercharging ability.
Yeah, ability to plug in with interface with Tesla superchargers. It charges like 40 kilowatts.
Yeah, so 45.
If you want to pretend like you're a Bolt, you can.
Just avoid superchargers, use them as a backup.
Right.
Hopefully Lucid will have higher power boosting tech coming in Gravity. My fingers are crossed, especially as that will have a native NACS port. And
it'll be fun to see how they interface with V4 superchargers as those really roll out with the V4 cabinets. But
correct.
Otherwise, honestly, totally fine.
So then the final test that we did with it, Jordan, the driver assistance, which is our hogback trials.
Yep, the hogback driver assistance challenge. Not amazing. I feel like along with everything else of this car, it has the hardware, and I just feel like they're not fully optimized yet. They haven't quite dialed it in, and they keep working on it. And like you said in your intro, we've had this car 3 months. We've had multiple updates that have improved things. It didn't originally come with, you know, a screen showing cars around you. It didn't come with lane change assistance. Now it has those. But the lane change assist doesn't always work. When it does, it works great. It's a really like aggressive lane change. It's like, I'm doing it. Some cars, like the Kia, the lane change does not really annoys me. It's like, it's really hesitant and needs you to hold the wheel the whole time. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do my own lane change then. This, when the things are working with the ADAS, the Lucid Dream Drive Pro, Highway Assist, it's awesome. But
so what's your impression of just straight line cruising if you're going on a road trip? Because obviously our hogback test is extreme in the mountains, some of the toughest stretch, but you've taken this on road trips. I have not road tripped this car yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But what was your impression using it on trips?
Totally awesome. For most people's road trips. We do have that unique thing where we're living on the edge of the mountains. So I did go through the mountains on all my road trips, and the mountain sections are where I really just had to drive it manually because it couldn't really handle the curves sometimes. It now slows down your speed to handle the curves, and then it handles the curves better, but there's no way to control how much speed. So you know the I-90 team on our I-90 Surge just manually drove because that was slowing their speeds.
Right, it knew from mapping ahead that there's a corner, and it would preemptively drop speed when you could easily do that corner at full speed.
Yeah, so it just felt like the system was not confident, and that's the overarching theme here with the Dream Drive Pro. It just doesn't feel like a Pro to me. Like it's just like a good system for, you know, cruising through Kansas. I bet I could go from here to Kansas City with one charge if I went slow enough, whatever. But even just stopping for one charge, it'd be awesome. Going straight down I-70, this thing rocks. But it really is the curves, and also if you run into like a recent construction zone, we have a lot of that here on this highway. The pre-mapped issue is my biggest complaint. It's got all the tech in the world, more tech than Tesla. It's got LiDAR, it's got radar, it's got things that Tesla has been like, no, we don't need that. So I wish they could take full advantage. I think they will. I mean, we're seeing Lucid making updates and making progress.
Yeah, I heard there's going to be a big driver assistance update coming sometime end of this year, probably early next year at this rate.
Yeah, so I'm excited to keep testing it because it has gotten better in the time we've had it, but still not there. The fact that you can only do lane centering on pre-mapped highways.
Yeah,
terrible. And then even with that, sometimes the pre-mapping has little glitches and issues. It wouldn't let me re-engage it for like 5 whole minutes. Like
during the hogback?
During the hogback.
So what was the final score in the hogback?
-14.
Oh my God, dude.
Which is not great.
That's bad.
So yes, the hogback score at the moment is -14, but the Lucid could still earn some points back. We're still working on the hogback challenge driver's assistance test video. The issue is the lane centering only works on pre-mapped highways. We have a big issue with that as a concept. Like, why does a $40,000 Hyundai Ioniq 6 have it while a $120,000 Lucid Air not have it? Actually, it does have it, just limited to pre-mapped highways. Dream Drive Premium, by the way, which is not the premium version, the Pro version, does not have lane centering. So you can buy a Lucid and it doesn't even have lane centering as standard, which is crazy to me. While a Honda Accord and Hyundai Ioniq 6, you know, have that. Anyways, I digress. We have not been able to finish testing the Lucid for the hogback because of the pre-mapped road issues. It is a huge challenge. Even with the pre-mapping still functioning, like it functioning on pre-mapped roads, it was still a rough test. The ADAS is just not great. Dream Drive Pro is not a really great ADAS system yet. I still believe they're going to improve it. Like I said in this review multiple times, they have the hardware to do really good stuff. I think they just need to really work on optimizing everything because it is really rough, not super confidence inspiring, but at least the car is great to drive. So if you are someone who does like to drive your own car, it's honestly great. And on long straight roads, it's great, but it's just in our testing, in our edge case testing, in twisty roads, and even just trying to see what happens with an unresponsive driver, we've been unsuccessful with this. So that's a quick caveat. Now back to the normal video.
So, and the i7, which this is a competitor to the i7, was plus 40?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so yeah,
big difference there. But even
I didn't know it was that bad.
If I was road tripping it, I'd still pick this.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, certainly we've learned in comparison, this is a, so that's all the testing. Let's just get into that. So the 4 tests. So it did 510 miles at 70, did 150 in the 10% challenge, or just over that.
Yep.
Charging performance is different every single time, and it requires really making sure you're arriving at the station to get the maximum performance preconditioned. And then the hogback was not so good.
Yep.
So one of the things that I think a lot of our viewers definitely pick up on, and I feel it too when I review the Lucid, is we're maybe even a bit more critical, or maybe with higher expectations with this car than with some of the other cars that we drive. And I think the reason is Lucid brands this as compromise nothing.
They basically, Peter Rowlinson said this is the greatest car in the world. So that's the only reason we're being extremely have the bar set a little
And not just
high.
for Peter, but I really feel like people at Lucid and Lucid owners and Lucid investors truly believe this is the benchmark in every category. And we can pretty comfortably say it's not that. I mean, even just the driver assistance alone, looking at that, the charging performance alone, looking at that.
Yep.
But I think if you look at the total vehicle itself as to the spider web of capabilities, and certainly the driving performance is best in class. There's so many good things it does.
Yeah, it feels like the Swiss Army knife, and that's why having a parking lot of EVs, I would choose this a lot of the time, because I feel like I can go in, I can have fun in the canyons, I can drive fast, I can take crazy long road trips with few charging stops, which means I can pick my charging stops, like you said. I can skip the ones that PlugShare say are not working, and just have the time of my life. The sound system, I thought was pretty good before. The update has improved it,
you are just out of your mind. You also just said the Rivian had a better sound system than the Cybertruck, the Gen 1 Rivian. Yes.
Oh,
That's what you
Gen
said.
1, yeah.
Not even close. I don't know what the heck you're listening to, but you must, I mean, I normally trust your opinions, but after you said that, it's gone out the window.
No, well, here's the thing. You focus entirely on bass. I somewhat ignore bass.
That's the best part.
I don't fully ignore it, and that's why I think the weakness of here is there's just not enough sub bass.
Right, but they did a massive update.
Update helped it, but still no sub bass. You can't just create subwoofers with an update.
Right.
So they improved the mid bass and high bass response. It does feel more full. The soundstage does, but it's like, which is cool. Like, they're updating it, but also like no Apple Music.
But dude, we haven't even shown everyone around it. What's the spec on this thing, Jordan?
Yeah, we should have probably started with the spec. It's a Lucid Air Grand Touring. I forget what this color is, like moonlight something, I don't know. But
I don't know.
This is the blacked out, the shadow package, which is the way you want it.
Yes.
Removing all the chrome situation looks nice. These are the arrow wheels, which are ugly but effective.
Well, way better in black than the old chrome in black arrows.
100%, yeah.
I mean, we have a set, actually, Lucid sent us a set of the 20-inch, which I think is the best compromise wheel between range and performance.
Yep.
We just kind of ran out of time as we've been so busy, but we wanted to do more performance testing. Lucid, please let us drive a Sapphire.
We do need a Sapphire for testing reasons and purposes.
Only testing purposes.
Yes, exactly. And the Sapphire, the Sapphire fixes my issues with the design of this car.
Dude, Sapphire looks so meaty. I honestly, if they leased Sapphire, because I am genuinely worried about the bottom side depreciation on these things, which they just, based on previous history, I would lease a Sapphire if they would let me. As long as it's not astronomical.
Or you could buy a Sapphire and do another video like you do with your Plaid. I don't know.
Crash it into a curb and total it. There you go.
But yeah, this thing, there's not much to spec on these. It has the nice two-tone interior, very interesting different color seats in the rear and the front.
Yeah, open up that rear seat, front seat, let's take a look. Huge cabin, by the way, for the size.
They're so effective with their packaging. The space and everything is fantastic.
Unbelievable. For the I-90 Surge, we had my dad who's 6'5" and our buddy Alex who's 6'10", and they could sit in front and behind of each other.
Amazing.
It's the same footprint of Taycan, but with 100 times more room.
I don't know what Porsche was doing.
I don't. Porsche went out of their way to suck at packaging.
Right.
And this is so good.
Yeah. But it just looks good too, and it's it's been through a lot, 15,000 miles in 3 months. That's more than the average American drives in 1 year, and we did it in a fourth of a year. We've been all over the country with this thing.
Yeah, this car's really had the snot kicked out of it.
Yeah, but honestly, great spec. I wasn't excited about this color at first, but just having this with the black, it looks good. It's classy. You can show up with class, and you can also rip it around a racetrack.
All right, let's go for a drive. Jordan, we're out for a drive in the Lucid Air, and I think now's a pretty good time to talk about what we've done with the Air from the beginning. So from the moment we picked it up to now, with just over 14,000 miles, and this is before I road trip it back to the headquarters this weekend to return the car to them.
Yep. So California was first up, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I picked up the car with Colton, actually.
Yep.
And we picked it up at the factory factories in Arizona, picked it up at their HQ in Newark, California. So we got it, it was like fully charged, pretty much. And what we did was we had a 718 on test from Porsche, a Boxster. And Colton had to stop to refuel, both leaving at 100% full, well before this thing was out of juice, which was hilarious.
Yeah, it's impressive just how far this goes. But then maybe you should have stopped to charge, because you made it all the way to LA.
Yes.
And then
we got stuck.
Charging, DC fast charging in LA is just, we did a whole video on that too.
Yeah, one of the problems with Lucid Air is it does rely on the public DC charging system. So in many cases, this has enough range at moderate speeds to not even necessitate a charge for most driving.
Yeah.
I'd say unless you're really on a long trip, the range is great.
Yep.
Because you can skip the DC charging, especially in the Southwest, in that California area, Arizona, the charging infrastructure is just slammed. Everyone's charging.
Yep.
And it's impossible to get a spot in the middle of the day. So having range like this is absolutely necessary. But if you drive from San Francisco to LA and your hotel doesn't have a charger and you need to public charge, it took us hours.
Yeah.
To wait to get a spot to get in. And we went to multiple charging stations trying to figure out what was the best solution, and it sucked. We made a whole video on that. So this car is still sort of strapped, and it's almost let down by the public charging networks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have supercharging access yet. And even if it did, this thing would only charge it, like we mentioned, 45 kilowatts or so on an existing supercharger that's not version 4 high voltage.
Yep. So that's a challenge. But, most people's use case, driving around home, charging at home, you can go on a huge leash, 500 miles, or I guess 250-ish, out and back. And that's so much more than most people's driving than they even care about.
Pretty much, you can just rely on 400 miles no matter what you're doing in this car.
Yeah.
But if you really want to get 500 out of it, it's totally possible.
Yeah.
You just drop the speed, 65, 70, depending on conditions and wind, it does make a big impact. But if you need to stretch 500 miles in this car, I wouldn't even think twice about it. I would just get in, fully charged, and go.
Right. And notably, we didn't mention this in the range test, but it hit 0 in the high 400s, and then it just drove 30 miles past 0 at 70 miles an hour. So I don't think many people will drive 500 because of that. Most people will absolutely freak out when they see 0 and stop.
So that 500 miles isn't really consumer accessible, is what you're saying.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, at least not perceptively. So
yeah.
But yeah, we took it to some proving grounds in California, because we picked up a nice Grand Touring car that's really nice on road trips. And
the first thing arrow wheels.
Yeah, the first thing we thought was, let's see how this would rip in a racetrack situation.
So the first thing we actually did was we took it on this was in the intro video to the Lucid.
Yeah.
We took it on a high-speed road course where we wanted to see if we could overheat the motors or have the car derate on us, because part of this car is it's had a ton of updates from the previous Lucid Air. 25 is, you can think of it almost as like a mid-cycle refresh or a technical update to the car.
Oh yeah.
And we saw no derating in probably the most aggressive kind of street driving anyone would normally do. You can still overheat it. You can overheat any electric car, especially in a racetrack scenario. But on a canyon road simulation, we were on a closed road, going wide open throttle down every straightaway, leaning into the brakes every single time. Man, did the thermals improve massively from the pre-refresh car.
Yep, definitely.
Then we took it on the skid pad and went full send drifting this thing around.
That was crazy. This thing is so fun and controllable, and especially fun on these kind of narrow arrow wheels.
Yeah, there's no grip on these wheels and tires. So I think, in order for them to get that 500 miles of range, you need the arrow wheels and tires, which totally reduces your grip.
Yep.
And I hate to say it, but I don't think I've ever driven a Lucid on, at least not extensively, on like grippy tires.
Well, man.
I've only ever done the range stuff with these things.
I can't wait for you to try Sapphire.
I know, I really need to drive Sapphire because everyone says it's absolutely bonkers.
Right.
But dude, just the balance, the way the ESP control was, and that you can turn it off, the powertrain, driveline control logic of sending power to the rear, coming across center, pulling you out with the front, it's all in that video. Absolutely top class, top quality, top performance. It is, like I mentioned, the best driving car in the world. I'm happy to say that.
They just have the hardware needed for so many things to excel at. And I think they are taking advantage of it in some ways, like you said, with driving. So hopefully they catch up with that in the rest of the car, where it's like, I mean, even the software, not my favorite, and I did a whole video on the software as well, and they have the chip powering it to do anything you could ever dream of. Like, it's overclocked, which is perfect. I mean, it's not taking advantage of the full hardware.
Overspec'd?
Overspec'd, yeah.
Yeah, not overclocked.
No. the chip is more than what the car needs to really handle it.
You said that this can be updated in the future cars, right?
Yeah.
Or sorry, in the previous cars.
Yes. They haven't confirmed cost or exactly how. So I hate to praise them on that until we see how that actually rolls out. But just the fact that they are paying attention to previous owners.
Yeah, which they need to. That was the early adopter.
Yeah.
Don't leave them behind.
Yeah. And that makes me really intrigued, because this software is so snappy, and I really nitpick other cars that are less snappy.
So, okay, that was like kind of week one.
Yeah.
Was like, we were just blown away by the software speed improvements, blown away by the range, blown away by the driving characteristics.
Yep.
Then you took it on a road trip to Colorado from the proving grounds.
Yeah.
From California. And it was what, 1,000 miles, and you stopped twice?
Yeah, so that was the premise of the road trip, was 1,000 miles with 2 stops. I didn't even leave with a full battery though. It was close, but like I could have extended it. We thought about maybe trying to do 1 stop, but there was literally just no way with the climbing of a 6,000 feet total elevation gain. And then I had some wind and stuff to deal with. So I didn't have perfect conditions, but still did 1,000 miles with only 2 stops. That was actually it wasn't the most relaxing road trip, because I was really trying to stretch it, so I needed to stop more than the Lucid did. So I actually stopped once without charging, which felt so weird and wrong, but it was just like, well, I literally have to stop somewhere. The charging that I found didn't really have good food options, or like, I don't know, that's a whole, we've talked about that in charging videos. But that was a really fun, really hands-on way for me to get acquainted with the car, get acquainted with how it road trips, and also the route planning. I did extensive, I used the route planning exclusively. I didn't do my manual calculations at all, but of course I tried to optimize the route planning, and that's, I guess, one of the nitpicks there. The route planning is a bit of a challenge to really, really, truly optimize for the car. Like, it wouldn't let me set state of charge at my stops. And when this car can go so far, like, it won't let you arrive below like 10%. And when you have 10%, that's like 50 miles. And a lot of stops, it was aiming for 20% arrivals, which is like 100 miles of range.
That's like way more than my smart car has.
Yeah, which is crazy. And if you're trying to take advantage of that charging curve we talked about, then it's like, give me there low, so I can plug in and rip, and then just keep going.
Because it really holds full power from like the bottom quarter of the battery pack. Yeah. You want to maximize that 0 to 25% as much as possible, and then everything past that, you're like, can I make it to the next station?
Exactly.
As long as it's right off the highway. If it's far away, at least this car gives you the option to deep charge and stretch, which you proved in that video.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different like theories and ways people road trip. Some people like a relaxing long stop. I would argue the Lucid's perfect at that, because you just plug it in, give it 45 minutes or an hour, and up top it charges so slow that if you genuinely are going to get lunch, you don't really have to worry about the car completing and finishing your meal that quickly.
Which is kind of nice. And I even, on a different road trip, I even plugged into a supercharger, just because I was like, I need time to get some work done.
It was a Magic Dock?
Well, Magic Dock, yeah. Let me just get some work done, and it just charged so slowly.
It takes hours. That was
hilarious.
Okay, so we did that road trip. We got it back to Colorado. That's where we did most of the testing, the range. We live streamed the range test.
Oh my gosh.
That was one of the best things we've ever done on Out of Spec. It was so fun.
Yeah.
A ton of Lucid employees messaging me saying, keep going, it can do more, it's got it. And, of course, viewers were like, when is it going to die? And you had to give it a little push to get over a hill.
Yep.
But then it just kept going after that. It was amazing.
Yeah, the testing has been a lot of fun. I mean, everything with this car has really been pretty fun.
Yeah, so we've done that. And then actually, while it's been here at the office, this car has been incredibly useful.
Right.
We've used this feature that I don't think many owners are using, but it's such a unique feature that every electric car should have, which is I can plug the charge port of this car into another car with their RangeXchange cable and actually share the energy from this battery pack and put it into another electric car.
Yep.
And so it does, what's super amazing about it is there's, a lot of the electric pickup trucks have 240 volt power and exportable power and all this stuff. This can do 40 amps continuous, which Cybertruck can do and others.
Yep.
Actually just Cybertruck. The others can only do 32 amps. So this can do 40 amp continuous because it's actually limited by the EVSE cable.
Yep.
This is actually capable of doing 80 amp bidirectional if
That'd
they
be
had the right
crazy.
cable. It would help us a lot if they did that. So give us like a real juicy cable. No voltage sag under load.
Yeah.
So what was weird initially, and part of the reason I think it's been so cool that we've had this car and Lucid's been able to see the videos and actually adjust a lot of things based off of our feedback only in the 3 months we've had it. One of them is this would not charge off the Cybertruck.
Yep.
So the Cybertruck sags under load. So, you know, it'll be 240 volts at 1 amp, and then as soon as you pull 40 amps, it's like 218. And that could simulate bad wiring, a dangerous situation in the household wiring. And so a lot of cars will just stop charging altogether or derate charging performance. Lucid just would not charge on the Cybertruck. It would go, oh no, there's so much voltage sag, there must be a wiring issue.
Yeah.
Based on our videos, they've now allowed it to accept that much voltage sag, but no more. So it actually will charge off the Cybertruck now.
That's awesome, because with this range test, we had to actually trailer it back to the charger.
That's right. Yep, because we wanted to charge it off the side of the road with our Cybertruck, but at the time it wouldn't. If we did it now, it would charge perfectly off the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
So little things like that are just, I think, it's really cool that we have the car because we can make videos for viewers, but I think our use of them does help make the car better from the manufacturer standpoint.
It helps that we do tests in the edge cases. I mean, we get a lot of flack sometimes. People are like, oh, why are you doing this test this way? Because no one does it that way. And it's like, well, technically a few people could, so we're being useful to them. But then if we push it and do sort of benchmark testing, that does allow Lucid to make changes that could improve even just a few people's experiences and lives and who knows what else. But you're right, this range exchange feature has allowed us to use this car. This car has been made appearances in like 40 other range test videos because we're using it to charge other cars when we run them dead.
And I'd rather use this than the Cybertruck because this will do 40 amps with no voltage sag.
Yep. So it does charge just a little bit faster. And so it's awesome to just like die on the side of the road and then plug this in. So we plugged the Cybertruck into this, and this charged the Cybertruck with our recent range test against the Rivian. That was awesome. Worked perfectly.
There was a bug with RangeXchange that is fixed now, where if you AC charged it for a while and then went right to a RangeXchange, it wouldn't work. That's fixed.
Nice.
So it didn't work for one of our videos, and it was the Macan and BZ4X one.
Oh yeah.
But that's all fixed now. That's been, so, you know, with Lucid, I think they really are just like rapidly innovating with software, and it almost feels like so much of it, I don't know if it's true, but it feels like so much of it is because of what we're saying in our videos.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so unique and so cool to have that great two-way relationship with them to say, you know, in your video, Jordan, where you're like volume knob didn't respond enough.
Yeah.
Now it's like 3 times as sensitive and how it should be.
Yeah, it's great. And so I hope they keep making these tweaks and stuff because the software is getting better every single update, but there's just still some things and some missing things. Like, I mean, just to get in here to test the sound system, I was really excited about that. But they don't have Apple Music as an app. I didn't want to use CarPlay, and so it's just like, okay, well, I guess I can't use Dolby Atmos, which is one of the halo features on Lucid, unless you have a Tidal subscription, which I canceled because the app sucks. But this is beautiful out here.
Yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so let's continue with what we did with the car. We brought it back here. You then went on a road trip to Seattle.
Yep.
How was that?
So that was great. I actually drove this, I guess that was 1,400 miles. So definitely more than 2 stops. I think I did 4 or something like that. I wasn't really trying to keep the stops down on that time because I wanted to see, you know, if I don't charge as deeply, how does each stop work?
You also camped in the car.
Yeah, so I did I planned an overnight stop to where I could camp on an AC charger because we were also trying to keep the DC charging down on this car as much as possible.
Let's explain that because these are some of the little nitpicks that are annoying about the car, truly.
Yeah, so I mean, you've had a lot of experience with DC counters lately.
Yeah.
How would you explain this one?
It's not as bad as BMW.
Great.
Way better than BMW's DC counter. However, the Lucid does start to derate DC charging maximum performance after multiple sessions.
Yep.
You can earn it back by AC charging a bunch.
Yep.
And so we've tried during our time, especially before the testing and the surge and everything, to AC charge this thing as much as possible. But still, even then for us, we do a ton of high power DC charging.
Yep.
And so this car definitely had some minor derate here and there. But I don't think it's that major because even during the surge, they were seeing 340 kilowatts, thousands of miles into the test. So I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I think it's very subtle.
But it is just, it's annoying that it's there.
Yeah.
Because Taycan doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Taycan's just 320 kilowatts every time, no matter what.
So predictable and
yeah,
so good.
so easy.
So car camping in this was fun, but there is no actual camp mode. There's a keep climate mode type of thing, but then like to change the temperature, I almost couldn't do that. Like I couldn't do it from the app. So I had to go into the screen, but to start the car, I had to push my foot on the brake. So I had to like use a pole to reach from the back to put my foot on the brake to change that. So it's like, they could maybe benchmark Tesla and I hate to say it, but even VinFast and how that camp mode operates.
Jordan, who's sleeping in their Lucid?
I know.
Spend 130 grand in the car. Is
same,
this your only option to sleep?
The same people who want some of the really edge case things we're testing other places. I mean, it's a comfortable, quiet environment. I loved camping in this thing.
Zero interest from my side.
not a big camper guy over here.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Sprinter van conversion thing. I like the idea, just not in my sedan.
Right. Well,
at least you've got the shades in the back you can put up.
Yeah, I made it work. I actually camped out and back on the road trip, so that was actually pretty fun. Trying, Lucid in a way not many people try it, and I did find a place to stop and charge overnight. It was a really cool spot in Missoula, Montana. Found it on PlugShare. This guy has a solar company and has a Tesla wall charger, so then I used one of our adapters to go from NACS to J7072. That worked great. But otherwise, road tripping, again, super easy, super comfortable. I could blast music the whole time, did a lot of podcasts, and it's just a really comfortable ride. And the massage seats are, I think, pretty decent, pretty good enough to make it so I wasn't nearly as fatigued as I was on the Model 3 road trips I've done. So
we've done that road trip. Then I think we did the Surge right after that.
It then came back from Seattle. The timing didn't work out super great. We did some more, living with it in a bit and using this on range tests and stuff. But then, yes, I-90 Surge happened. I guess, wow, almost 2 months ago at this point, as of this recording. Yeah. Feels like yesterday because we just finished the videos. But I don't know. We have a whole episode, a podcast that you did with the Lucid team on deconstructing that.
Yeah, why they ran out of charge, what was going on. And I think, first of all, I think the team all loved the space of the car, the comfort of the car. They certainly had a few nitpicks on the driver assistance, slowing down for turns, stuff like we mentioned there. But I think they all were blown away with the quality. This car still has not a single rattle in it.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about that for a second.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Your Model 3.
My brand new Model 3 has developed 2 rattles since I took delivery 500 miles ago.
Right.
This thing has
amazing.
Nearly 15,000 miles still.
Of lots of abuse. I mean, I've been ripping on this thing. It's seen some numbers that are pretty big on that display right there, and it's not that I would ever do that, of course, but it's pretty amazing to see that. So the Surge team was great. It ran out because of a few different components that either BMS tuning, there was a shunt temperature thing. Lucid explained it all to me, not in full detail, but they learned from our Surge on how to better make the car more repeatable and consistent in the performance. A lot of people will blame the Lucid team for running out of charge because they went below 0%. But if you look at our initial range test, it went 30 miles past 0. They had used below 0 multiple times throughout that trip, and the car charges better down low. So they were like 6 miles past 0, no problem.
Yeah.
But similar to what happened in the F-150 Lightning, don't trust the BMS. When it's hit 0, the car died.
Yep.
And so is it the car's fault that it died when it hit 0, or is it the car's fault that maybe they were able to go 30 miles below 0 before and then not afterwards? I don't know. Either way, Lucid learned from all the data on this car and will make it consistent in the future. That is so cool.
Similar to what we saw with Ford, learning from that situation. I mean, it was, again, edge case. Who's driving their car 2,500 miles without stopping to let it recalibrate?
That's what Lucid said. They said, we've never run a drive cycle like this. And same with Ford. They're like, what did you do? The engineers were like, oh my God, we've never even thought to test that.
Right. But it is cool to find those edge cases and, BMS sway. And again, not trusting the BMS, which is funny because maybe eventually you could trust the BMS.
Yeah.
In a perfect future, you can, but...
Well, with Porsche, you can.
Yeah, great.
So I drove the Porsche. We haven't announced anything yet, so don't get too excited, but I drove it across the country after the Surge.
Yep.
And I parked it at 3% when I finished the drive, after, doing the Surge and going across the country again.
Yep.
And I parked it at 3%. I came back to it in the morning. It was at 3%.
Wow.
I know. I called up some of my friends at Porsche. I'm like, can you believe this? They're like, wow, that's so cool. I'm like, no one else would know to get excited about this except some super nerds. Right. But it was really great tuning on that car. Yep. So that's the thing with this. Well, actually, let's continue. So Surge happened. We brought it back here, and then we've just kind of been dailying it. I mean, I've been driving it not at nighttime with the headlights. The headlights making noise. I don't think it made it in this clip. Did it, Jordan? I think we canceled that one.
No, yeah.
But the headlights scream at you. We'll get into the pros and cons, so I try not to drive it at nighttime. And so you just get this high-pitched, ultra-annoying noise from them. And I've asked them to fix that for years, and it's just not better yet. I thought it was, then it's not.
Yeah, I don't know how they fixed that.
I talked to the lighting guy at Audi about it because I heard it on the A6 e-tron when I filmed it, and he was like, oh, this is driving us crazy. And I'm like, okay, this is very German. Right. And he's like, it'll be fixed in the series production car. So as soon as I drive an A6 e-tron, the series one, I'm going to make sure that goes away. Otherwise, I'm calling up, can't remember his name, but he made it in a video, head of lighting at Audi. Yeah, so we've been using it for range test, cruising around. You ran the hogback yesterday, and it's just been nice to have, but we're finally done. I really feel like we've done everything we needed to do genuinely with this car. I feel comfortable that it's time to give it back. We know the Lucid Air GT really well, and that's where I think it's time to get into our pros and cons.
Yeah.
And I think we should do that with a good view.
Sounds good.
So what we should do, since we're on a good road, Jordan, we should go into sprint mode, high regen, because it's cold out. I'm not worried about thermals. Vehicle, drive settings, stability control off, and
go.
Jordan, before we get into our pros and cons of the Lucid Air, I think it's important to talk a little bit about just how it drives. This is a car review, after all, a long-term review, and the most important thing to us is at least how the car drives. And I feel like so much of our testing and comparison and focus really doesn't factor in driving dynamics, unfortunately.
Right, not everyone tests based on that either. A lot of people do, read the press release and they regurgitate that to the end consumer, which does help with a lot of providing information. But, as far as driving, especially at the limit, not many people are testing that. Right,
and it's also very hard to convey because it's very much a feeling thing. We always say we don't drive cars on paper, so 0 to 60 times and horsepower numbers don't, they translate differently in different cars, and a lot of it is, got to get your butt in the seat, test drive the car, and even then it's tough to really get the car in a lot of different driving scenarios. So I feel like in our 3 months, we've had the car on track, we've had the car on highway, in canyon roads, in city driving, and we really have a good idea as to how it drives. And so this is ignoring my ergonomic complaints about the car, ignoring our software complaints. I said it already in this video, but I really think it's the best driving car in the world. That doesn't mean it's the best sports driving experience or the best city comfortable driving experience. Like a smart car is better in the city and a GT3 RS is better on track, and maybe a 911 ST is better in the canyons. But in terms of everything that this can do, the spider web of capabilities, without having a crazy, 3-chamber air suspension or sway bar disconnect or hydraulic sway bar like Rivian, any of those tech, this thing does everything really well.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, you've pushed it probably harder than I have. I'm not quite the driver, but even just the driving I have done, the road trips that we talked about, the city driving especially, sometimes I wish there was rear steer, just sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Could be add another dimension.
Because it is a long car, but honestly, it gets around anywhere. It really darts into every corner.
So where I think this car actually struggles is in the city driving category. Okay. Like you mentioned, it's a bit long. It's I don't know, it's just not the best thing to inch around town. Because they use these permanent magnet motors and they now have isolation mounts for the front motor, there's a lot less NVH coming to the cabin, but you still feel, especially if you're on a steep hill and you're inching forward and back, quite a bit of motor noise, which if you're in the i7 or even Tesla, they're dead silent.
Yeah.
So I think the low speed is where I struggle with this car the most. And it's also just like the steering is kind of a constant weight to it. There's not much feedback. It's a pretty quick rack. And sometimes it is nice to have a hand-over-hand motion around the city. But it's still amazing to drive at low speed. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying this car shines the faster you're going.
Right. And I know it's not really driving performance review because the whole idea of ADAS is how little do I have to drive. But the fact that you can't do lane centering on any city streets, I find to be repeatedly annoying. And then even the fact of, auto parking, cool. It doesn't work very well. I've done a bit of testing with that, and it just struggles to find a parking spot. once it finds one, it'll actually do okay parking, but then it parks like weird angles sometimes. So
okay,
it's not really.
I can say the same about every auto park system I've ever used.
I guess so. My Model 3's been perfect.
Typical Tesla guy over here. So like on the highway and in the performance categories is where I really think this car shines. In terms of highway cruising, this is the best way to go down the road.
Yeah.
It's just the suspension tuning in this soft mode. There's three main drive profiles. There's smooth, swift, sprint. Unfortunately, there's no custom. And that is my one major request in a software update is let me go spicy powertrain, because the problem is if you want soft suspension, they make the car slow.
Yeah.
And really laggy, and it just doesn't, respond to the throttle inputs. So if you want sprint throttle, which gives you the full 819 horsepower and whatever torque, and it's even faster in launch control. It's insane when you launch this thing. This isn't even the GT Performance.
Oh.
This is just the GT. You don't need any more power than this. Actually, we drag raced the Audi RS6 Avant against this, and this walked it. And this just keeps pulling and pulling. Most electric cars slow down at speed. This is like more power, more power, more power. The 100 to 150 in this car is crazy. Allegedly. I have had it, maybe not this one actually, but we've maxed out Lucids in the past, and they just pull so hard to the top.
And they feel sturdy.
They feel very nice. I mean, the aero wheels and tires, when you really start pushing them, you're down on grip massively. So the car does just move around a little bit when you're boogieing, but I like a loose car. So on the highway cruising, you set it 70, 80, 85 miles an hour. It's quiet, soaks up the bumps. It's honest. I just love going on the highway. And then where it really is impressive, because it's so good on the highway, is the faster you drive it, the better it gets. So you come out here to the canyons, obviously not this particular canyon, you would never, but it's unbelievably fast. I have never had a car walk away from me in this thing, and I'm on little tiny, what even are these things? 245s all around, R19s with like the stupid high tread wear EV tires, and it's just so predictable. It always turns. The steering is great. It's just got so much rigidity in terms of what that tire is doing from a lateral motion. In terms of, it almost feels like it has solid bearings everywhere instead of bushings, but it's just honest. It's just great. And you can back the stability control down. You can turn it all the way off. You can power out of a corner with some opposite lock. It never seems to send power to the wrong motor. It's just locking and unlocking constantly.
The whole time. It drives me nuts.
We'll get into the cons and pros in a minute. But it's just when you drive this car, which is not the performance variant, there's the GTP and Sapphire above this. The fact that the long range one that does over 500 miles on a charge, I can send it around a track or absolutely haul ass down a mountain road and have amazing brake pedal that I can hold it right at threshold brakes before ABS kicks in, and I can get it right on the edge of the tire everywhere. It's not fast on these wheels and tires, of course, around corners, but I think it's probably like whatever they're doing to just keep all four contact patches on the ground at all times, it's got to be faster than most any other electric car on like a 275 tire.
Yeah, so if you had a Lucid personally, you'd be one of those people with 2 sets of wheels and tires. Absolutely.
I think this is a car that needs 2 sets of wheels and tires, not summer and winter, but it needs your highway and your performance.
Yeah, and then maybe a third set with like hardcore snow tires.
Yeah, get some Nokians. I mean, we also, we're so lucky we get to push the limits of cars, and obviously the tire is the most important part of the car. That's what's, holding you to the ground. And, putting a different tire on can bring out different characteristics of the car. I would be really curious to see if they fall apart, like if it's not this good when the grip levels go up. So I wonder if like putting a Michelin Pilot Sport S5 or something on this car would actually make it do weird things at the limit. It could be just really good because you're never stressing the suspension components on these tires and wheels, but I've had no desire to ever upgrade these. We have the performance ones sitting at the hub. I've never had a need to want to upgrade past this. It's fun. It's fun to just slide it around. You can come out of a corner and just hang the tail out, big cloud of smoke, comes out straight every single time. And so that's the cool thing. It's unbelievably amazing for the long distance, unbelievably amazing in the canyons and on track. Maybe not from a thermal performance compared to some other electric cars. If you're really, really ripping on it in a canyon, you're not going to overheat this car. No normal person will get there.
Right.
But in the city, that's where the annoyances start for me.
Yeah.
It's still nice and comfortable and quiet, and it looks the part. You definitely have, it's an image that you wanted a very technical vehicle, very high quality vehicle, that you clearly made a choice to buy an electric forward-thinking car that's not a Tesla. And a lot of people like that image.
Right.
So pros and cons, Jordan. Let's start cons.
Okay.
That was too much praise. Can I just go first on what really annoys me about the car?
Yep.
And I think my biggest issue, part of which is just the entry and getting starting process of driving in the Lucid is just a kerfuffle every time. Is that the right word?
So many times with phone as a key, but also with the key fob and also with the key card, it won't sometimes recognize I'm standing next to it and I'm trying to get into my own car and I look like a weirdo.
Yeah, you look like, oh, I'm trying to break into it. So it was just unlocked before.
Yeah.
Now it's insanely annoying. So now I have to open up the app, pull up Lucid, hit the unlock button. The app thinks it's unlocked. There's no cell service here. There we go.
That would be bad.
Thankfully, it uses Bluetooth. So that's number one. Number two, getting into the car, if you can come around this side. Now, the ergonomics of the Lucid for me, my body type, the way I like to sit, is unique to Kyle Connor. It is not unique to anyone else. I have never been able to get comfortable in this car. And to me, that is the one thing that, like, if I had like there's just something about a Porsche ergonomic system. I spoke to some of their interior designers and like there's a percentage of, hip to whatever, and I'm not an interior guy at all, right? But whatever Porsche does, that in every car, even like a base Macan to a Cayenne to a 911, you sit low. Did it just lock with the door open? Yep. You sit low, the wheel comes out to you, and you just have this like unbelievably sporty but still comfortable driving experience. This is neither sporty or comfortable for me. So first of all, getting in, I feel bad because I've been trying to avoid putting wear on this bolster, and it is not showing anywhere, but I just tend to like have to get my leg under the wheel. So like I'm coming in with a weird angle. I've brushed up against this. I have to like, my leg comes under the wheel. Thankfully it's a flat bottom, so it doesn't get snagged too much. And then I sit in here and I'm like, whoa, wheel needs to come out here because preferably I'd have my seat farther back, but there's a certain place where the seat won't go down all the way. So if I move it forwards, it'll actually come up and like clear an obstacle. See it just raised there for a second? And I can't go any lower here. So I have to choose to get the lowest position. Do I want to be forwards and low or back and low? And it just raised again to clear an obstacle.
Weird.
And so right where I need to sit is right where the seat doesn't go low. So I'm either too far away, and I have like short arms. I can't like reach the wheel and have great control of the car. Or I got to get right up on the wheel and have no ability to relax. That's a very Kyle Connor thing, but I do think the ergonomics, there's just something so much better about any other car than this. Something about it doesn't work for me. And that's a unique situation, but it does, in full transparency, make it where I don't necessarily want to drive this car all the time. It says the vehicle will sleep in 20 seconds, and it sounds like a bomb's about to go off. I'm going to say, I'm still here. Damn, that's annoying.
Okay, so yeah.
We're going through the cons. Secondly, the headlights, Jordan.
Yeah.
Not only are they angled wrong on this car, and you'd like blind everyone.
Oh, a lot of people think you're driving with your brights on. Yeah, that's right.
They're incredibly bright headlights. They're this like super cool tech that like actually they get really hot and require cooling, which to me doesn't seem efficient. I don't know. But they're incredibly bright and angled up. It could just be this car particular thing because I don't really notice other Lucids with it, but we get flashed a lot at night. And the headlights make noise, which is a thing. And there's this high-pitched electric frequency that comes into the cabin that I complained a ton about when we first reviewed the Lucid Air. They said they were looking into it. We mentioned it when we got this car, and they said, a friend of mine said, Peter Rawlinson's definitely going to look into it. And it's just like, maybe it's fixed in new production now, or they're at least working on it. But when I drive this car at night, there's just this faint, high-pitched noise that makes me angry. I don't really get angry, but there's something about that just like makes me go insane.
Which is funny because I don't really notice it. So I think we're all different with our ears and hearing and sensitivities. Yes. So definitely.
But you can hear it if you listen for it.
Yes. Yeah. But I have to like listen for it and then I'm reminded and then I'm annoyed. But like.
So you can put the sound system on and then it goes away. Right. Obviously it blends into the background. But the problem is when it blends into the background or when you're listening to the sound system. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah, brother. 6-liter Power Stroke. Surprised it's still running. Can't breathe anymore. I actually secretly love the smell of diesel. I really do. It's
You're going to get canceled.
It's dinging again.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to shut this. There we go. By the way, the door shut's not good either. So if we're just talking about getting in and out of it, like this, and it's got soft close, and it's just is like a bit clunky and makes too many clicks, and there's no solid thunk that you get from a really high quality thing. I have to say, same with i7. We've been doing a lot of i7 comparisons because luxury wise, that's the top. That also has a really bad door thunk.
Yeah. We're picky with door thunks, I guess.
Yeah. We're trying to think what has a great door thunk.
First gen Rivian.
First gen Rivian. Not the Gen 2 Rivian. Anyway, yeah, so that kind of stuff. Then you get in the car and you want to get moving, Jordan. And so you start it up. We don't need to necessarily show it because the car's awake. But if you're just waking it up, you're like, open the damn doors, let's go. You get in, put it in drive. It used to take a really long time to start up. It's been massively improved, that startup time, but especially now, sometimes it does like an auto profile switch and you have to wait. And I felt like I've had to wait for like a good 30 seconds occasionally for this thing to turn on and move. Other times it's ready to go instantly. One thing I have to say, VinFast VF8, it's ready to go every time. Sometimes it might not shut off, but that thing's ready to go as soon as you get in there. So I really hope Lucid can continue to improve that, you know, button seat to start moving time. Because I just like to be, like, even in my Rivian, I can walk up to it, have it in drive before my butt hits the seat, and I'm moving.
Yeah, because some cars are like, oh, okay, you probably want the whole infotainment thing loaded. And it's like, no, I just want to drive.
Yeah, just do whatever you need to do to spin that up. Just let me get underway. Yeah. Because most of the time, if anyone knows me, I'm always late to something. And so I'm always just like having to book it everywhere. So it's like, I'm just like in the car, throw the stuff in the back into gear, and I'm like, let's go. And you hit the drive stalk 500 times.
Right.
What else don't we like about this thing? So beyond all that, the stocks are not great.
Yeah, I mean, the last nitpick on the exterior. And it is totally subjective, I guess. But
yeah, we can do exterior nitpicks. I've got some.
I love the front end. Love it.
Me too.
The back end, I've never been a huge fan of the car from this angle back here.
They've improved the quality of this back giant plastic piece, the trunk. It used to never fit. This one fits better, but it's still not perfect.
Yeah, it's okay, but it's like, especially straight on back, I don't love this angle. Sapphire really does fix it because it adds little fender flares on the wheel arches and a little spoiler. It's a bit bigger than this. That just makes it look a lot better. But I think the whole shape of this clamshell, I know it's effective, but I really hate how it looks.
Totally get that. We've always called it a bit of an old man vibe. I think the shadow line helps a lot with the overall perception of the car.
Package,
yeah. So that's pretty nice. One thing we didn't do with this car was a build quality review. And the reason was Lucid told us that the hood was painted before we got it. Yeah. So there was some issue with it, and they painted it.
And Colton thought or had heard that they had made like new paint improvements, because we looked at Lucids before, Colton has, but this didn't seem to have that. So we just were like, okay, no big deal.
Yeah, no change from previous. Couple little, maybe they've tightened up some tolerances, but I do think we need to get a Lucid in that's a customer delivered car to Colton with a Lucid. The problem is they're just not selling that many of these in Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't see them very often. They actually outsold Taycan and Model S last quarter.
That's wild. And I was just in the Bay Area last week, saw so many Lucids. Everywhere.
It's very regionally popular. Unfortunately, not here in Colorado, because it's actually a great winter car. It's very efficient in the cold with the new heat pump. It actually warms up the cabin very quickly. I've been very impressed with the cold weather performance of this car.
Right. But so, for the rest of the cons, I think inside is where...
Yeah, that's where it all kind of falls apart, doesn't it? First of all, just the door handles suck.
And also when they're folded in, you try to tap them and bring them out. Like they go in too far. It's just kind of, I don't know, kind of weird.
Okay, these stocks, because this is an interaction point, are extremely plasticky. They're too far away from the wheel, and they have too much throw to them. I mean, they just feel cheap, and they don't respond that fast.
Yeah.
Also, isn't it supposed to throw up a... Yeah, see, now it's on and in drive. That was great. There we go. Now you've got the cameras here. Sometimes these are very laggy.
The cameras are, and sometimes the turn signal bong noise is laggy.
Dude, you're right. Okay, so every like third time you put the signal on in this car, you'll hear tick, 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 or tick, tick.
It's like catching up with itself.
Yeah, like it lags the... But I've checked, because when it's happened, I've looked into the reflection on cars in front, and the external signals don't do it.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing with how they process the audio. I have no idea why.
Yeah, it definitely like catches. This isn't the only car we've seen it in, but this is the worst offender.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like almost they have one audio file, and that's where it stops and restarts. I don't know, but
Yep.
that is it is an annoyance. General Motors stuff does it too, actually.
Yeah, you're right.
We noticed it in Silverado and Equinox and others, so that was a bit annoying. Other than that, though, nitpicks, like I love getting in and out of it. The front, I mean, this is little stuff. And again, we always mention, but you have to look at the 30,000 foot view of this car, which is incredible engineering feat. But then like little stuff like this would never happen with a German brand because they have 50,000 people named Klaus worried about the feeling of this stock. Whereas Lucid, you know, they were starting to ramp up as a company to build this car. It's incredible what they were able to do. You can tell it's a Gen 1 product, but it's still a, you know, if they just take this same approach and really focus on the attention to detail for Gravity and other models, they have a super bright future ahead of them. But yeah, no, those front switches are too far forwards.
Yeah, I agree. And I would just swap them with a door handle or something. I put the door handle further out because you're using that less.
Yeah.
It's minor, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is always in my line of sight.
And just, I think, you know, notably Model X has a similar sort of windshield that goes up above you, but the visors tie in with the pillar, same with the Cybertruck. Because these don't, you have a user serviceable item right here, which are watch batteries powering the vanity mirror.
I actually think Cybertruck uses batteries too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw you mention that in a review, but I'm fairly certain Cybertruck uses batteries.
I don't think so. Maybe you're right.
I think they do.
I just, because the Cybertruck goes into the pillar, I assume they tied the wiring into the pillar.
Okay. Yeah, we can ask Wes. He would know.
That's just kind of funny. It's not really, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I've never used those mirror lights myself.
Right. I mean, those batteries would power this thing for a while.
Right.
And I think this should flip down instead of flipping up.
Yeah.
But, not that I've ever used that, but just first glance. This is why we should come to automakers before they launch their car and say, like, here's what we will say in our video.
Yeah.
If you want to fix anything, go right ahead. I mean, we could never accept a penny, but it would be fun to do that.
No, yeah, that'd be super fun to do pro bono. Otherwise, storage space seems pretty cool. I will say this cubby back here is silly, and they've fixed this with Gravity, but you have to move that screen to access this, which means no one's ever going to use that.
No.
And then
we put stuff here.
With this screen away, you're limited on this screen, so you really do need both screens. And the interaction between the two is a bit clunky. You can really get used to it, I think, but a lot of people, when they first get in this car, are really thrown off.
So I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit that even though they've made it snappy and responsive and it does have some powerful features, I don't like this split idea. I much prefer just one big screen in the center that can do everything. I don't like that I have to go to nav here and then it pulls down to this one and, you know, I can slide it up. Stuff like that just doesn't make sense to me. And I've spent a lot of time with this car, not nearly as much as you, Jordan, but it's just, I find myself driving it and ignoring a lot of this, which is a very positive point for a lot of people, but it also shows me that the software is not friendly enough to make me want to interact with it. I actually want to avoid interactions. This is too far away for a reach, and I don't really like it. I don't like the whole concept of user interaction, regardless of how much they want to improve this. I just don't like this. And I really don't like that I'm, you know, forced into sprint with harsh suspension. There's just a lot of fundamental, like philosophical items and ways that this thing works that I just don't love. No, dude, it is.
The bongs are back.
The bongs are back.
Oh, it's because you're on my profile.
You're in Jordan's profile. Okay.
Which I never set up Jordan's profile, so I don't know what that is.
Okay, I don't know.
Oh, that's Jordan Golson.
Oh, different Jordan.
Different Jordan. I was like, what in the... Because that was not there before.
Oh, okay. I thought it was you.
He drove the car back from the I-90 surge.
Right, so and he wrote an article, I think, about driving this from Boston to...
Hopefully he turned... So he left the bongs on. He's a bong guy.
Oh, I hate the bongs. Okay. But at least you can turn the bongs off.
Yeah, somewhere.
So, you know, you can set your charging limit, and with a Lucid, honestly, just set it to 50 most of the time. You really don't need much. They recommend an 80% daily limit. Nothing weird there. So in terms of the cons, Jordan, I think that's kind of it. You know, the inability to separate drive mode for me is a big one. The ergonomics is a big one. The sound system is a big one. Even though they've improved it massively, it actually sounds acceptable now. It's no longer bad.
It and I didn't think it was ever bad, but it's definitely...
It was bad.
It's better. They still need more than 3 bands of EQ. You need like 5 at minimum to really dial in the difference between bass and like mid bass. I don't find this enough to really use. And then also with the nav,
this has the upgraded sound system, by the way. Yeah. And it's the worst out of all the sedans. That's how you know it's not good.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's the worst competitively against its
I would agree. Like
set.
EQS, i7, even Model S.
EQS may have the best one, actually.
I agree.
i7 needs the iX subwoofer.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. But then like going into the navigation stuff, like, you know, doing, and I'm curious to see after you do your road trip, maybe we can do a podcast.
Yeah.
Just the issues with the route planner, not letting you really dial in all the settings you want, not setting the state of charge on arrival stuff.
I was just getting annoyed because the headlights are on. Sorry. I was like, why am I going absolutely insane?
Yeah, but you just need more adjustability. I mean, this car has the compute power. Just let me do as much as I possibly want. It's cool that you can do like downloaded maps. I had like the different states downloaded when I took this up to Seattle and back.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, it's a little clunky. It does weird zooming stuff when you're driving, and I've covered all this in my road trip videos as well. So just
the overall infotainment, UI, UX, I think needs a redo. I think they agree because Gravity's completely redone, completely new strategy for Gravity.
I can't wait to try that because it's still similar ethos. Still have the 2-screen thing, which annoys me, but at least they don't have a screen that folds away, which is, even Lucid admitted, basically that's silly.
Yeah, and like it doesn't show temperature up all the time, little things like that. You have to like click this to see it, and sometimes those get out of sync. And
and even these buttons actually wore down when we had our tires replaced. They replaced the switch too.
Okay, I never actually noticed that. I know you did.
Small things. And then one other thing, like, I don't know why I just thought of this, but with the ADAS, you know, it's not a capacitive wheel, but it has really perfect torque sensing, which is nice. Like, just a little bit to know you're there.
This is supposed to be the complaining portion.
Oh, well, I'm just selling it. Well, I guess I had ADAS in my list of complaints.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is a complaint. Because if you touch the, you know, in the Tesla, if you would toggle like your speed up and down.
Yes, it counts as touching the wheel.
Yeah, with the Lucid it doesn't.
Okay.
So
would you want it to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want everything I do on the wheel should count as touching the wheel.
What else do you not like?
That's pretty well. Oh, we tested the automatic emergency braking in the desert. Remember this?
No.
You were in front of me in the RS6.
Oh, and I kept slamming on the brakes to see how your car would respond.
This detected you once, and then the other 2 times it would have hit you.
This was real consumer testing, where we take 2 press cars and try and crash them together. And so I was doing, you know, getting the brakes hot in the RS6, and, you know, so I think we were doing, I don't know, some stupid number of speed, jam on the brakes and see if this would respond. And one time it went full ABS.
Yeah.
And the next times it just didn't even see you.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I wish the steering wheel had more adjustability. But I think we've covered most things. I mean, it's interesting that Lucid took the approach of manual vents, whereas pretty much everyone else is doing.
These don't feel good, though.
No, they feel very cheap. And I do think typically you'd set it and forget it. But I think I've come around on digital vents because of the point that people have made that if you are multiple users driving a car and you like your vents in different places,
it's a big deal.
Syncing to the profile is cool.
Don't do digital vents like Porsche does.
Right.
It's impossible in a Taycan to get the air vent where you want it.
Yeah, yeah.
But in Tesla, it's really good.
Tesla and Rivian do it
Rivian's okay,
well.
but Tesla's the best one, I think.
definitely.
Because they just have so much more airflow coming out. Their HVAC's awesome.
Yeah.
Pros. Let's go outside.
Okay.
I don't think there's much pros going on for me in the cabin.
The interior design.
Yeah, it looks great.
Huge fan.
Materials are awesome. The seats themselves are great. I just don't fit in that car, and it puts me in a bad frame of mind. I think Sapphire is better. It's got a different seat. I like the idea of that, you know, slick top, even though I like the cool windshield thing too.
I love the glass roof, and that is an option on this car. So we have the glass roof, of course, but you know, I'm curious to try the sound system now with the update with the slick top, because there are differences. Savage Geese has noted some differences with how it sounds. Yeah. So
I love those guys. They're great.
Curious to try that out.
They can actually do a video in a condensed period of time.
Yeah. They also spend 8 months planning it. So
okay, we do 0 planning. I haven't even wrote down a list of what I like and dislike. Okay. So let's go through the likes from my side really quick.
Okay.
The overall packaging of the car is world class.
Yeah.
The fact that it has such a large front trunk, which I can open for you and show you, because I don't think we've done that yet, is absolutely amazing. Oh no, did this break?
That broke
when?
I think like way back in California when we picked it up.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been broken for a long time.
So someone really ripped on that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't break. Yeah, we've got our vehicle-to-vehicle charging adapter. So yeah, just massive amount of storage in this thing that's really cool. Wow, it doesn't work that well when that strap is broken. I didn't know that was broken, but at least you can reach in and close it. There's no noise. It'll just, chop your head off.
Yeah. Front packaging and rear packaging, huge trunk too.
Yeah, let's show everyone. And the seats can go down.
It keeps locking and unlocking.
So frustrating. Big clamshell trunk. Wish it was a hatchback, but I think it makes sense from an NVH standpoint if you have a big piece of metal back there. This thing, from an NVH perspective, so much more dialed in than the early cars.
Yep.
It's not absolutely dead quiet. It's not i7 quiet by any stretch of the imagination, especially in the back seat, but it's just a great, there's no weird resonance tones in this car. It's just no reverberations. They really packaged it so there's no, I would say annoying frequencies in it, other than at very low speed at hard throttle, like climbing a hill, pulling in my driveway.
Right. Yeah. But great storage back here as well. This is just a car where you can pick up people and their luggage and not have to pick one or the other. So. Okay.
So that's a pro.
Yeah.
The back seat room, front seat room. The car's huge with the same footprint as Taycan. The next is the range. I mean, I'm a big fan of, I'll give up some range for faster charging, but I actually think that's not representative of most of our audience. And so the range, while it is very affected by driving conditions, if you drive 85, this is not a 500-mile car.
No,
it's a 400-mile car.
barely 400.
Maybe even high 300s in some situations. So it's like maybe high 300s, worst case scenario, and that's 100 to 0.
Yeah, which is still pretty good though.
And it makes really good power down low because it's very high voltage. It helps. It's not the only reason, but it just does. So the range is great, Jordan. You can skip charging stations with it and just continue along. Next pro, Jordan, the way this car drives. That's its really unique selling point to me. The chassis engineering and the powertrain engineering, plus the control logic to tie that all together, is world class. No one comes close.
Wow, high praise.
High praise, yeah. It's really fun to drive. That's not to say it's my choice on a road like this. Give me a manual transmission, something all the time.
Right.
But the factor in the way this car gets down the road, and to me, a lot of this is individual preference, but to me, I love the way this car drives.
Well, so it's like someone like you would love this as a daily to complement your manual transmission car, because if
you could get the seat lower in the steering wheel.
Right, you're right, yeah. But as a concept of a daily, like some people are like, oh, I have a boring daily and then I have a fun car. This is like also a fun daily.
Absolutely.
So
and you can just the brake pedal's like not firm or anything, but it's perfectly controllable.
Yeah.
The steering is like absolutely amazing. The throttle is sharp in sprint mode, but then I don't like driving around in sprint mode because it does firm up the dampers a bit too much.
Right.
When you drive it hard, actually the car's still really soft. And that's where I think maybe it's not going to be as good on like a sticky tire. I don't know. Maybe it would be. I've never experienced it. But I just wish I could have individual control of suspension, powertrain, ESP.
I think that's great feedback. I completely agree. It is fun to have that speed as like a party trick with people, but then you also want to impress them with how smooth it rides.
Yeah.
So it's just like, give me that manual control, the manual mode.
Plus, I like a really soft car to drive fast. And I think a lot of other people do in a big luxury sedan.
Yeah.
What else do we love about it?
I mean, like I said, the software response, even though it's not our favorite software as a whole, it looks beautiful. They really nailed it with just making good looking software. And then it's just so snappy. Like, I am so upset when I get in a car and try to interact with the software and I'm waiting for it to like load. Like it's laggy, like Ford.
Yeah, Ford's really bad at that.
So they've got that nailed, and that also allows for future proofing. And notably, the new generation Rivian, as much as we've said otherwise, it's also pretty good.
Well, their software is amazing.
Yeah, so that's great. And there's a lot.
I think Rivian is setting the benchmark for software.
Yeah, Rivian and Tesla, both of them do have leaps and bounds ahead of Lucid in the functionality department, the route planning stuff. So I'm hoping Lucid can up their game in that department. They already have the hardware, and if they really can give the new chips to the old Lucid Airs, that's really a game changer for the early adopters.
Other pros? It is just so good overall.
Yeah.
That it's easy to find nitpicks.
Yeah.
But in general, it is, I think in a class of its own. I guess one of the main pros would be, would you pick this car to own out of all of the electric sedans on the market? So let's run through its direct competition.
Yeah.
BMW i7.
Yeah.
Mercedes EQS. Genesis G80, not really. Because
the what?
They make an electric one of those, Jordan.
Oh, wow.
We totally forgot. And then at the last minute, I remembered that car existed, so I rented one for the Surge. Model S, of course.
Yeah.
And I own a Model S.
Yeah.
I don't really like my Model S.
No, this does feel... I feel like I came into this expecting to be the Model S fan and just be like, okay, Lucid's cool, this, and this. But like, literally in most cases, I would pick this over Model S to drive any day.
I would pick this over everything except i7. So I really do actually see a two-car solution of i7 in this.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, if you're just doing a long commute or even city driving, there's something so high quality about that i7, the seating position, the sound system, the build of the car. Colton did a build quality review on that. It was amazing. The noise, dead silent. Yeah. It's a very impressive car. It also is completely inefficient, has no range, sucks at road tripping, right? And it's not actually that fun to drive fast.
Yeah,
it's you can do it.
That is the city cruiser right there.
Yeah, that's like New York City, sit in the back, executive lounge around.
Oh my gosh.
This is the perfect blend of a little bit of that, not really that much, but then so much more dynamic and so much more range and so much more charging performance.
Yeah.
I mean, we notably have given Lucid a lot of crap about the charging. It still rips. If you get to a charger and do the 10% challenge, this thing boogies.
Yeah, it's still impressive. It still would have beaten i7 and EQS. Well, still beat i7 even after dying. But it still would have beat EQS, and it probably would have been super close with Model S on our i90 Surge. But I feel like another thing we should mention is, you know, if you were to buy a Lucid, what's that experience? Because part of the reason I came into this Lucid long-term review skeptical is because my only experience with Lucid beforehand was going to a Lucid showroom, doing a test drive and having just a rough experience with the personnel there. They didn't really know much about the car.
And you're not the only one to say this. We've heard this from multiple people. Not so much recently. Maybe they've reformed some things.
Yeah.
But even as recent as 6 months ago, there was this resurgence of like everyone having this very snooty experience going to a Lucid showroom.
Yeah. And I don't know what the ordering experience to receiving your car would be necessarily compared to the competition, but I mean, we all know like Mercedes and BMW, I'm sure you'd have a fine experience because they are premium luxury brands.
And you usually have your one sales consultant that you lease from every 3 years.
But it would not be as fast as, you know, taking delivery of like a Model S. Like that's just like so easy.
No, they're not really selling that many of them. So.
No. And that's due for an upgrade, and I'll be curious to see when that's like really like reformed.
Yeah, Model S is just not the move right now.
But then like ownership, I mean, there's probably a decent amount more Tesla service centers, but you know, we've even interacted with Lucid service.
They've been great.
I had a great experience up in Seattle, you know, getting the tires replaced on this thing, and they were so nice, and it did take them a long time.
And they also replaced the windshield because we had a crack in the windshield.
Yep, that's right. So, but that was back here in Denver.
Oh, was that Denver?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, every time
how much was the windshield?
They wouldn't disclose it, but I think it was close to $2,000.
Yeah, I think it's around $2,000, which isn't bad for this huge piece of glass.
Huge piece of glass, a lot of calibration needed and stuff. So, but yeah, versus the competition, there's a lot of good competition. I mean, that's why when we started planning the Surge, it was like, okay, we'll take the couple of sedans. It's like, wait, there's like 9 of them.
Yep, exactly.
So,
oh yeah, well, ADAS on this road just pushed me in, thinking I hit a line, and I was so far away.
Far from it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just turned off all that stuff. Yeah, that really does need some work. So to the point, a couple other points on things that come along with Lucid. The purchase experience is a big one, and so far we've just not been blown away. Every time I go to a Lucid showroom, maybe it's because we're young and we don't look like the typical Lucid buyer, but I also feel like that. I mean, why does that matter? Like they just are not totally knowledgeable about the cars and super excited, and they love it. Every experience I've had, a Lucid employee trashes the competition.
Yeah, like when I went to Lucid, I was with my ex, and she had a Tesla, and the guy was like hating on her car. It was not the whole like, oh, I see what your car does, well, here's what our car does. Our car's pretty cool, isn't it? Like that's typically how you'd approach that. He came into it with saying like, your car is total garbage. And that was just like a kind of a sour taste. Like, even if she was in the market for a Lucid, it's like, that's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't make you feel good.
Right. And I think that extends beyond the sales experience to even Lucid owners. Now, I'm not here to put down Lucid owners at all.
Yeah.
And Lucid owners in general, we have a lot of my friends drive Lucids.
Yeah.
But there's this investor and Lucid owner thing that's like, because Peter Rawlinson and Lucid say this is the best car in the world, they can do no wrong. And if we criticize it, then we're obviously in the wrong, and it's very combative, and they were extremely rude, a group of people, to the Lucid team for running out in the surge when we've had data in the past where the car would go below zero, and they ran out at zero, and they're blaming us rather than the car. And it is a fundamental, like, should you ever go below zero? That's a question that's reasonable to ask, but based off previous data, I would hope they would at least understand why the team approached it that way, and not just said, oh, we're out to make Lucid look bad. If we were out to make Lucid look bad, they wouldn't have the trust in us to loan us a car for months on end and let us do what we want to do with it. Like, we have a great relationship with the company, and I think we're extremely fair when we review vehicles. That's not to say we get everything right all the time, but we try to. But a lot of the owners are, like, I just feel like whenever I make a Lucid post, I'm almost not excited to, because I just know someone's going to complain.
Well, and the fact that the team who actually ran out still came away praising the car. And I think a lot of people, like you said, were assuming we're just out to get them, and then they, include the $ LUCD in their post, and it's like, those are the really obnoxious owners, and I'm not going to say Lucid exclusives to that. I mean,
Tesla has some of the most annoying owners on the planet. And so I don't know what's worse, Tesla fanboys or Lucid fanboys.
Just ignore all of them.
Yeah, which we do. We do a pretty good job. But that, unfortunately, a lot of what's said online about the Lucid is driven by investing topics, and not about the merits or demerits of the car.
Yeah. And I've really enjoyed meeting Lucids in the wild. I mean, on my road trips, I actually ran into a few Lucids, and they just always seem like fun, excited, enthusiast owners. And I've even talked to them about some of my thoughts on the car that we shared in this video, and they've agreed. They weren't like blind Lucid fanboys in general. They were typically like, oh yeah, I agree. I wish the route planning was a bit better here and there, and like the software is a little clunky, but I'm used to it now. And they all hope for the best.
The last point, Jordan.
Okay.
If you're going to buy a brand new Lucid from Lucid, which is honestly what the company needs, they need to sell Lucid Airs, that they're in business to sell cars. It feels like, even though the car is amazing and it's maybe our pick out of all the electric sedans on the market, it's definitely my pick. I would go Sapphire.
Yeah.
And just be like 250 grand. Like, you park a Sapphire next to a Taycan Turbo GT, I'd go Sapphire. I haven't driven it yet, but based off of everything I know about that car, the space, the design, I love Taycan, and I love the charging. So if I was really doing a ton of road tripping, I would do Taycan just because of the charging. But if I'm looking at a total vehicle performance of daily comfort and everything, it'd be a really tough choice, actually. I don't know, now that I'm thinking about it. But it really comes down to, we all know how much I love Taycan. I don't think the viewers know how much I really do love the Air. And if there's just a few last little changes, the headlights thing, the seating position, it would be a no question I would do the Air.
Right.
And so there's just little ergonomic issues and little nitpicks. The one thing that our viewers or potential Lucid customers are going to have to do is they'll have to step up to the plate to spend a lot of money on a new Lucid Air compared with a used one. Now, it's not unique that luxury cars depreciate, okay? I lost 100 grand on the Model S or more. Like, this happens. But it still is something that you're spending a lot of money compared to the competition. This is a $130,000 car. And are you getting as much as a $130,000 EQS in whatever area you're looking for? I feel like there's very few people who love driving as much as I do that are looking for an electric car, and therefore that unique selling point of the Air, like, its value is lowered, and then you have to sell the car based off of software and other components where it kind of falls apart. And I think that's where, if they could bring all the elements of the Lucid Air up, it would help a ton. But without question, this thing will depreciate like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, Lucid was already asking for this car back 5,000 miles ago. They're like, we have to sell it. So I think they're worried about depreciation on their own car.
Sorry.
They were like 9,000 miles is kind of our max. And I'm like, well, sorry, we got to run it across the country. And then they didn't ask for it back immediately. But, I think they're even a little bit concerned about some of the depreciation on their own internal car.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think they're aware of it. Yeah. So I guess, before my phone dies, also my final thought. I mean, I've said this throughout all of the videos and everything. It seems like they have the packaging, they have the hardware, even the ADAS hardware suite. I mean, they went the not full camera route like Tesla, and I actually like that approach. they have everything here. They just need to keep tuning it and optimizing it. And from my perspective, it's especially the software perspective, like ADAS, route planning. I mean, they didn't have a subwoofer in the car. That's disappointing, but I guess, oh well, my car doesn't have that either. But they have so much of the framework here ready to take advantage of all of that. They just need to put more team, I guess, into those departments to tune them up.
It's hard for a company that has to spread their engineering resources on keeping an existing car alive for its life cycle versus engineering their next product to be class leading.
So I can't wait to see what Gravity has done in our nitpicks
It will be
department.
a true telltale of the future of Lucid, I think.
Yeah.
And we're driving it next week.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, can't wait. Actually, by the time this video goes up, we'll probably be just a couple days away from driving Gravity.
Yep.
And you know, my final thoughts on the Lucid. First of all, I can't thank them enough for letting us drive this car for the last 3 months. It's a huge risk on their part, no question, because they know what we're going to do with it, and we do not hold back ever for any automaker at any time. So I can't thank them enough for their trust in us, for letting us drive this and do everything. I feel like we've been more than fair. We've shown the car at its best.
Yep.
We've shown the car at its worst. And we really, I think, have a good idea of what this car is. And Jordan, you're totally right. It's to be the best car in the world and to compromise nothing, it's still a little bit away. However, they're on the right track. The bones are great here, and it's a massive improvement from the first Lucid Air GT that my dad had to this new 25. And if they can just keep on that trajectory, this thing will be perfect in another 3 years.
Yep.
If they can just keep going. And again, we're always happy to come over and help and share our opinions.
Yeah, I believe it'll get better. We've seen it get better even in our 3 months owning it or driving it.
The updates since we got this thing have been amazing.
So I'm a believer. We'll see what they actually come out with though, and we'll keep nitpicking where we can. And yeah, Gravity, like you said, is the true telltale. A lot of people think the first car is the most important, but I really do think it's like the next car. What did they learn on? What will they do with Gravity? And then how will they take care of the existing Air owners? Because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, certainly. Things seem pretty good here.
Yep.
And I love the car. So there's all the data. That's our experience with it. It's absolutely a world-class vehicle, no question. Is it compromised? Nothing? No. Is it the best car in the world? No, maybe. But in certain areas it is.
Yeah.
But I just think, okay, keep working on each area of competence, and they're on the right track.
Right.
And it's been wonderful, truly wonderful to drive this car for the last 15,000 miles. And I get to road trip it now, which I haven't done yet. So maybe my opinion will change. I don't know. We'll do a podcast. Subscribe to the Aspect Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is our super long final wrap-up of our Lucid Air. It's been an eye-opener. I would recommend this car to anyone. It feels durable, feels reliable.
Yeah.
And other than the depreciation, I think it's going to be, if you're just going to buy it and hold it for a while, get the big battery for sure.
Yeah.
And just use that range, use that comfort, use the performance, and enjoy it. I'm pretty sure they lease out well right now, so just go lease one.
Yep.
If you want to try it out. Thanks for watching. See you in another one again soon. Bye-bye.